everybody, Lloyd here with Just Got Played, and today I'm going to do a solo review. So I'm going to be looking at Nemo's War, the Ultimate Edition by Victory Point Games. So let's head down to the table, and I'm going to give you an overview of how this game plays, and then when I finish with that, I'll tell you my thoughts. So this is Nemo's War. The game is set up with the recommended setting for the first play, and I'm just going to go through real quick and kind of tell you what everything is and what you're going to do. So in Nemo's War, you're going to pilot the Nautilus around the 12 seas. So there's 7 major seas and then 7 major oceans, and then all these little secondary seas that kind of connect to the major oceans of the world. As Captain Nemo, you are essentially trying to, depending on which motive you choose, which I'll get to that in a second, you are going to be doing a bunch of different actions to try and get yourself points for endgame scoring. So this is a timed game in that this deck has a specific amount of cards in it. And it is broken up into multiple chapters based on, again, which motive you choose. And that's going to kind of build the deck. The reason why I say it's on a timer is because you're going to go through the deck, and each one of those cards is going to be a round of the game. The game can end before that in several ways. So depending on which motive you're playing, all these different defeat sections on the notoriety track can cause you to lose if you reach that notoriety level. If any of your ship resources, which are these 3 things, end up hitting the defeat space, then you automatically lose. And if the seas ever completely fill up with ships and warships, and you cannot legally place a ship out on the board when you need to, then the game immediately ends in your defeat. So let's just real quick go through the different actions you can take, and then I'll go over everything that's happening on the board. So the different actions you have are adventure, attack, incite, move, rest, repair, refit, and search. So some of those cost you 2 action points, and some of them are just 1 action point. So just going through what they all are. Adventure allows you to search through these decks, this deck of cards over here, which is essentially just a randomized deck of leftover cards from the draw pile. And they're just going to give you further adventures to go on to get more resources and really to collect treasures. The attack is these guys here are actually boats, which are represented by these tiles. They are ships, and they are in this bag. So whenever you need to attack a ship, you'll take a random guy, a random boat out of this bag, and you will put it out on the board. So a lot of the game is attacking and sinking ships, which makes your notoriety go up, but it's kind of similar to like a pandemic in that the board is going to start getting overrun, and the further you get into the game, the bigger and badder warships are going to start coming out, making it very difficult to move around the seas and do anything. So you're going to need to sink those ships. So attack is something you're going to do a lot in this game. Next up, you have incite. So inciting, these little squares here on the board, those are like little ports of call that you can incite riots and uprisings to help your cause. So essentially what it does is you're going to pass a check in order to place one of these little cubes out into one of these spots. And by doing so, depending on how well you pass the test, which I'll get back to passing tests in a minute, is going to determine how successful you were, and that will make your notoriety go back down. So this little pirate token here will track your notoriety, and it's going to go up as you sink ships and perform actions, certain actions. And then performing the Incite action can actually lower this back down to keep you from losing the game. The next step is you have move. So the Nautilus moves around the oceans by essentially all these little kind of aquamarine connections. These other connections are for different things in the game. And some of them you can actually move. So like this one here is the Arabian Tunnel, and it will connect, I believe, here if you actually draw that card out of the deck. So that's something that you can use later in the game. So these do not count as movement unless the game tells you can do that. So you're going to end up moving from ocean to ocean. So from the Indian Ocean, I could go over here to the Western Pacific, which takes me over to this side, and vice versa, or I could go over to the Cape of Good Hope. So that's just moving. And you just kind of put your thing at the top there, and you have access to all the ships that are in that particular ocean. Just leave that out there. Next up, you have rest. So throughout the game, you will lose these resources. They'll go down based off of certain things. And resting allows you to try and pass a check to regain crew, which is important because if your crew gets all the way down here, you lose the game. So that's what resting does. Repair does the same thing, but for your hull. So you pass checks, and then you can get more hull back. Refit is spending salvage to get upgrades for the Nautilus. And so there is a giant deck of upgrades. However, whatever is out for the game, that's all that's going to be out for the entire game. Certain cards in the adventure deck and maybe treasures will put more cards, more upgrades out. So what you see is what you get for the entirety of the game unless something else tells you otherwise. And the last thing is search. So searching is for searching for treasure. So any of these ocean spaces that have a treasure icon on them will allow you to perform a search action. And inside this bag is where you're going to do your searching, and you'll pull out a treasure. And they range from just regular points like this guy here, which is essentially just 2 points at the end of the game. And depending on your multiplier, that could be more points. And then you have some of these that are retain. So you're going to get to hold on to those, and you can do things with them by cashing them in. Or if you have them at the end of the game, you just get the points that are on them. And there's some other things in the bag called wonders, and wonders are like special treasures, and they typically have a high multiplier that they're going to be worth maybe 1 point, but then you're going to have a multiplier here, as you can see on this card. You'll have a multiplier of like this one's times 7. So one wonder that's worth 1 point will then be worth 7. So those are all the different actions you can do. Now, performing actions in the game requires you to pass checks. And over here on the side, you have a chart of all of the checks. So essentially, a 2 to 6 is a failure. This is your failure column. And there are degrees of failure. So less than a 2 is a 2 or less is the worst possible failure, and it's going to be really bad for you. This one might not be as bad. You may not actually lose anything. You may just, ignore the action. These here are your passes. So a 7 to 12. And then these just get kind of better. So obviously getting a more than 12 will typically get you something great. So like if you're collecting treasures, instead of getting 1 treasure, you'll get 2 treasures. Instead of gaining 1 crew, you'll gain 2 crew, and so on. So how do you pass a check? The way the game works, you have 2 d6s that you're going to roll, and whatever you roll, that is your score for the roll, and then you compare it to the chart. So you can modify that through various means. Over here in the fine print and on the adventure cards when you have checks, it'll tell you which resources you can wager. So if you look up here at the board, if a check allows you, so like doing a search action allows you to use any one ship resource. So you can use Nemo, crew, or hull. So if you wager one of those, so if I wagered the crew, I would move my little slider there. And now I'm going to get +3 to my roll. So I'd have a 3 + 3. So I'd actually still fail, but it wouldn't be, well, actually it would be just as bad. But say I had that would, kick me over into a passing, a successful roll. Now, if you fail, you'll actually lose the, what you wagered. So whenever you wager stuff, you put it in between the 2 pips. So these aren't all spaces. Only the circles are the actual spaces. The in between just shows you the modifier that you're getting and lets you know that you did wager that. So if I wagered the crew and won, I would not lose it. Now we just put it back up to the top. If I did wager it and lose, it would just go down. Some action cards allow you, or adventure cards allow you to wager multiple resources. You can lose multiple resources on a turn. And that's in addition to any of the sources, the resources that you would lose. So, is there anything on here? So, if you're doing a rest action and you used, Nemo to try and boost it and you rolled terribly, well, it would be impossible to roll a Nemo. I take that back. You could lose Nemo and a crew if you failed with getting a 2 or less, because anytime you roll Snake Eyes in the game, that is an instant fail, no matter what your modifier is. So as soon as you roll this, that is an instant fail on any test in the game. Okay, so that is checks, and all the checks are performed the same way. You're going to roll 2 dice and compare it to the chart. And then add in any of your modifiers. And the modifiers have to be put on before you roll the dice, except some cards will allow you to modify after. And your crew, some of the crew will give you modifiers after you roll. So you can wager these guys to get special modifiers and special actions. But if you... I said wager, you have to sacrifice them. So if I wanted to get this +1 after the roll, I would flip it over, and that would essentially, I would never have access to that for the rest of the game. Sinking ships is done in a similar way. There are 2 different types of ships in the game. There are military ships that have an attack strength, and then there are merchant ships which have no attack strength. Both of the battles are carried out very similarly, except the attack ships, the warships, actually get to attack you first. So the way attacking works, you roll 2 dice. If this was the ship, it would be able to attack. You're going to compare the attack value of 4 to the attack value of the ship. And if this roll is less than this number, the ship hits you. The way damage is calculated is that is a single hit. You would roll another die and then look at the chart up here to see where you actually take a hit. So in this case, I would have taken 1 hit from this ship. I took a hit on the 5, so I would lose 1 hull. The worst case scenario is if you roll Snake Eyes when the ship is attacking you, because then instead of getting 1 hit, you're going to take 1 D3 hits. So if I roll this, I'm actually going to take 3 hits for that. So I would then roll the die 3 times and I would get 3 random results. And that is the worst you can possibly do. You cannot modify a ship attack. All you do is if you decide to attack a ship and it's a warship, it's always going to attack you first. There's nothing you can do to modify that. Once on offense, you can then, again, wager any one resource to modify your roll. You would roll the dice, compare your value. So if I had wagered a crew on that, I would have gotten a +3. With my 6, I would have got a 9, and I would have sunk the ship. When you sink a ship, you will get a certain amount of notoriety. And then depending on which ocean you were in, so if I was in the South Atlantic and I sunk this ship that was in the South Atlantic, I have 2 choices of where to put it. I could put it here, which is going to gain me points at the end of the game. And it's also going to try and collect points here by filling up all of these spaces in each column. Or if I choose not to take the ship here, I can put the ship over into my salvage pile. And when I choose for it to go in the salvage pile, it's no longer worth any points. Instead, what I'm going to use it for is I'm going to collect ships over here until I have enough points to buy a card. So all the cards have a cost up in the corner. And if I wanted to buy the fog machine, I would do a refit test. So I would roll the dice to check to see if I pass. If I pass, I would then pay whatever the cost is. And some of the success test results actually cost more or less depending on how good you roll. So just if I got a standard pass, it would cost me 2. I would toss these 2 out of the game and I would install the new upgrade. That's pretty much how all the tests in the game work, and that's pretty much all of the actions that you would do. There are 3 different types of cards in the game. So if we take a look just here, we have test cards, which when these come out of either one of the deck, I take that back. If this card comes out of the draw pile, you have to do the test. Any card that comes out of here, when you choose to adventure, you can choose to just ignore it and put it at the bottom of the deck and move on. You don't have to attempt it. However, if you do not attempt it, you don't get to search for treasure. If I did pull the card out of the adventure deck and I attempted it and pass or fail, I would still get to search for treasure. However, if this card comes out of the draw pile, you have to do it. It's a test. It tells you what you're testing and it gives you a pass and fail scenario. There is a keep card. So the keep card, I put it out in front of me, and at some point during the game, I may be able to take advantage of the text that's here to do what it says and gain an advantage, or it might cause me a disadvantage for the entire game. Typically, if you keep the card, you might be able to get points for it by not playing it. And some of the cards you'll only get points for if you play it. Now, typically the cards that you get points for are cards that are going to give you some type of negative effect. And then they're going to go into one of the piles over there, and then you'll get points for it. And a lot of the cards that you would give you a positive effect, you're only going to get the points for if you keep it until the end of the game. And the last type of card in the deck is a play card. So when this card comes out, you just play the card. You can't affect it in any way. You just do what it says and move on. So this is, this particular one just says, you play it and gain 1 crew, then you shuffle it and put another card in there. So this one's actually a really good play card. Some of the play cards are very bad. But those are the 3 types of cards in the game. So that is the basic gist of the game. Like I said, you do have different motives throughout the game. So in this particular one is exploring, and it gives different modifiers, and it will affect kind of how you play the game. There's another motive for Captain Nemo called War, and he's obviously going to get a giant boost for warships and probably less for wonders discovered. But it is going to change how that particular version of him scores points at the end of the game. And it also will change where some of these defeat markers are. And this black die here is just marking where that is. Certain games will require you to roll that second, or will require you to roll this black die. These two dice over here are going to come out at different points in the game and require you to roll them. One thing I didn't cover was how ships get out on the board. So I'll just go through a standard turn now that you kind of have an idea of how everything works. On a standard turn, you're going to draw a card from the deck. In this case, it's a test card. I would do the test, roll the dice to try and pass it. If I pass it, I do what it says. And then depending on pass or fail and where these little icons tell me, certain cards are going to go into the pass pile and certain cards are going to go into the fail pile. Now this one says regardless, pass or fail, it's going to end up in the fail pile. It's just going to give me a specific result. Once I do this card, I am then going to figure out how I'm going to place ships out on the map and how many action points I'm going to get. So once again, I'll roll the dice. So on a 6 and a 1, that means that I'm going to place 2 ships out because I place 1 ship for each die. So I'm going to place 1 ship, one of these hidden ships, into the 1 ocean. And then I'm going to place 1 of these ships into the 6 ocean. This also determines how many action points I get. So I have the difference between these 2 dice. So on this particular turn, I got the best roll I possibly could. I would get 5 action points for the round. And then I can continue on with my actions. The action point track can never go above 5 unless a specific card tells you can gain more than 5. But I don't have to use all of my points every round. I can decide to use 2 points and save 3 for the next turn if there's nothing I really want to do. Once I start going through taking actions, I'm going to perform checks. And every time I take action, I'm going to pay the action point cost until I decide I don't want to take actions or I run out of points. One of the big things to pay attention to on ship placement is the ships will stay hidden until you need to reveal them. So on this turn, if I rolled a 1, I can't place a ship in the 1 ocean, which is the Western Pacific. I can, however, place a hidden ship into any one of the connecting oceans. So you can check connecting oceans by any of these green aquamarine routes or these dotted lines. So in this case, I have my pick of where I want to place the ship. I know I'm going to have to place another one over here. So I may decide, well, I'll just put one here because it is connected. But I could also place one here. I could place one here if there wasn't one there, and I can place one over in the Indian Ocean. Once you get to a certain point and all of their spots are full, you then have to start replacing these hidden ships with ships out of the bag. So if I were to roll the 1 again and all the spaces were full, I would pull a random one out of the bag and it would come out. The longer the game goes, the harder these boats are going to get. So as you can see, there's a first intermission, a second intermission, and a rising action. So this first intermission happens about, I think, 6 or 7 cards in the game. I think it's 6 cards in, and then this intermission happens. So all of these ships are going to go into the bag. So you have this is where they start actively hunting Nemo. Once you get to the second intermission, which is like, I don't know, another 10 or 15 cards in, you're going to throw these capital ships in, which are even worse. And then towards the end of the game, you get to the rising action. This is where the red ships come in, and they are getting very, very dangerous, and they're very hard to defeat. Scoring. So how do you score in this game? We'll just randomly place some guys out here. Okay. Got some treasures over there. So scoring takes place over all of the different points, all of the different areas of the game. So depending on where you're at on your notoriety, on your ship resources tracks, you'll gain positive points for being up here and negative points for being down here. You'll gain points for anything that's in this pass pile, and the fail pile you'll gain no points. You're going to gain points for all of the individual boats that are here. You'll compare this to all of your different stats over here. You will also gain points for every completed row. So it starts at 8 and it goes up to 40. You'll also gain points for however many uprisings you have. And then you'll again compare that to the multiplier. You will also gain points for all of your treasures that are left over here that you haven't cashed in. You will also gain points for characters. So any of your characters left or cards you have will gain you points. And all of these little things here are just little trackers that help you mark on this sheet how many points you have. So if I was looking at the warships, I would count up my warships, all the points in the little purple down here. I would add them all up. And in this case, I get -1 point for each for the Explorer motive. So I would add up all of these and minus them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I would lose 8 points off of the total. And then I can just use this marker since it matches the icon, and I can just place it on the 8. And I now know I have 8 points there. And then you just keep going on and you go down the list: warships, non-warships, adventure cards, treasure, liberation, science discovered, wonders seen, which will be up here. These little green ones are wonders. Ship resources. So you'll score here, positive points here, negative points down here, points for all of the rows, and how many characters you have left. You'll also gain points on your upgrade cards, depending on what they are. So some of them are adventure, some of them are science. There might be other ones in the deck. I haven't gone through the whole deck yet, so I don't know. But that is Nemo's War. So let's head back up and see what I thought.
Welcome back. So Nemo's War. This is a primarily solo game. It does have some co-op stuff in it that they added with the second edition. But it is a solo game. So I'm only going to be talking about that portion of it because I haven't played the co-op and I haven't played the competitive version of it. So I can only speak to the solo, which I think is its strong point anyway, from everything I've seen online talking to people. Okay. So what do I like about Nemo's War? Well, number one, it is a solo game. I really dig games that have a solo mode or are just a solo game. Just because, especially the last couple of years with COVID, I haven't been gaming as much, and I still want to game. And getting this to the table, a solo version makes it worthwhile. So if you're not a solo gamer, you probably won't be interested in Nemo's War. There is some co-op and some competitive stuff. I don't know how well it works. You'll have to check other reviews for that to get an actual firsthand view. What else do I like about it? Well, there's quite a few things I like about this. Number one, this is a big sprawling game in terms of story and narrative, right? You're going on the voyage of the Nautilus with Captain Nemo, and you are going under the seas, 20,000 leagues, right? And the game really exemplifies that with the massive amount of cards that it has. There's just tons and tons of cards. You're never going to see them all in one game. Sometimes you might even see all the cards that you've put into that one game because you lose before you get to them all, or just because you're probably not going to get through the entire adventure deck along with the draw deck. But I really like that randomness that it brings, and you feel like you're on a journey and you don't know what's happening. You're out doing stuff. You're being a pirate, or you're exploring, or you're in all-out war, or one of the many motives, which I'll get to in a second. But you're doing stuff and you're reacting to the environment. So there's ships hunting you, and there's you may encounter things in the deck like other characters and special upgrades and stuff. And it's all happening and you're reacting to it. And I really like that. It really feels like you're thrust into the narrative of the story. And
one of the other things I like about that is how that couples with the motives. So there's a bunch of different motives in the game that basically score you differently. You score differently, all the different kind of the point-sality way you get points in this game. And depending on what your motive is going to kind of determine how you play the game. So regardless, you're going to have to sink ships to control that kind of like pandemic. You're going to have to, go through the deck, the main draw deck, and do stuff. But depending on your motives, you may look for more treasure. You may focus primarily on warships. You may focus primarily on non-warships, like merchant ships. You may focus on adventuring, trying to get through that adventure deck to get more treasures and wonders. So those really change up how the way you play so that you're not doing the same thing every time. Even though this is a narrative-based game, it's not a fixed narrative. You could take the same deck of cards that you've put together in the same order and, depending on your motive, play completely differently and have a completely different experience based on what your motive is and how that's going to, change your motive for what you're doing on each turn. So maybe this turn you'll go sink a boat that came out rather than, camping on the adventure deck, trying to go through that adventure deck and, get more treasure. So I really like that aspect of it. And it's just a really big game. And usually with really big games with lots of stuff, they're fiddly. This game is not really fiddly considering how many ship tokens are out on the board, how many little treasure tokens are out, your little cubes for your uprisings. It would seem fiddly, but there's really not. On every turn, all you're doing is putting out 2 to 4 ships, depending on what stage of the game you're in, putting out a treasure token on occasion, a little gem. And whenever you do an uprising, you're putting a cube out on the board, assuming you do the uprising correctly. So there's not a lot of upkeep between turns. There's not a lot of, there's no moving stuff around. There's no, this guy gets stronger. This happens. All of your upkeep and fiddliness has been like very streamlined, and you just do it on a single part of the turn. So when you're placing those ships, you put the ship out on the board. You're either going to put out 1 token. If there's no room for those tokens, you're going to grab a token from the bag with an actual ship on it and place that out. Assuming that doesn't work, then you're going to start flipping tokens over. But it all happens at one point of the thing. So there's one step of upkeep, and it's very minimal. So I really like that, considering how much is in this game and how big and heavy this box is with all this stuff in it. The dislikes are very, very small for me. My biggest one really is the point system. Like, for this being a very narrative driven experiential type game, there is this almost in the back of your mind as you're going, that the story really falls away and you're not really making decisions based on what you would or wouldn't do. And the motives kind of, push you in that direction. But at the same time, it kind of has this well, if I go do this, I'm gonna score more points. And that kind of undercuts the narrative's theme a little bit for me. But that's a minor nitpick. The points aren't for winning or losing. The points are for determining what impact Captain Nemo and his crew had on the world. So they range, every motive has, I believe, 6 point values. It's 6 or 8 point values. I think 6. And they range from failure to world renowned, greatest person ever. And in the middle, you have inconsequential. Basically, you did some stuff, but nobody even paid enough attention to you to care. Or you made a small dent. You changed some lives, stuff like that. So the points are there mainly just to gauge how well you did in the story, but the points do feel a little bit, it does make it a little more abstract. The only other thing that I really didn't like about the game was the playtime. The playtime is a little bit long. Maybe as you are better with the rules and whatnot in the game, the playtime may come down. But the first time I played this is well over 3 hours. And that wasn't 3 hours with me reading the rules beforehand. I read the rules beforehand. I did like a test game and played like a half of a game just to kind of experience things and look the rules up as I came across them. So when I played the game completely, I wasn't constantly digging in the rule book. But that playtime was still, the second one was still about 3 hours. And that's another minor thing there. And again, this may happen. You may get better at this as you play the game more and more. But there are a few little like fiddly rules where I have to go look in the rule book to double check how they work. One of the big ones is when you're placing ships out, they go from a hidden token to a boat token to it goes from hidden token to in one sea, the sea that you rolled, to a spillover into another sea with a hidden token, to placing out an actual boat in one of the seas in your area, to flipping those boats over. And I think in the first game I played, I might have missed where I could have flipped a boat, because you have to be able to look at the table and know which boats need to be flipped. And the white ones, which are the non warships, have a warship side, and they're gray, so everything's color coded. And all of the warships, when they get flipped, are purple. So you can just kind of look for purple and gray to make sure that you flipped everything. But there's a few little tiny issues like that where the rules are a little bit obtuse and a little bit hard to remember, and I have to like constantly go back and check. But other than that, I still think it's a really cool game. Check it out. Let me know what you thought. Have you played Nemo's War? Any of the extras, any of the versions? This is the Ultimate Edition. I didn't play with any of the expansion stuff because I just wanted to play the base game and figure out how it worked and not mess everything up. But let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the little bell so you get notified for all of our video uploads. We do about 2 to 3 a week. Check the link and the description for our Discord. We also post in Discord every time we post a video up. So in case you didn't hit the bell, but you're part of the Discord, you still get the notification. And just come chat with us, hang out. We've got a small little group that's growing and growing. Come talk about games, tell us what you want to see. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.